He was just 10 years old when he realized the world didn't have space for boys like him. His name was Elijah. He stuttered badly, worse than most. Every time he tried to speak, his words stumbled over each other like frightened animals. His classmates laughed. Teachers interrupted him before he could finish a sentence. Even at home, his father would sigh in frustration and his mother would gently pat his head, as if to say, "Don't even try." He was smart, brilliant even. His notebooks were filled with inventions and drawings of machines, solar homes, and flying bicycles. But no one noticed, because in this world, it's the loud ones who get heard. And Elijah was quiet. He sat alone at lunch every day, building things from trash rubber bands, bottle caps, old wires, anything he could find. Some kids called him junk boy, others just avoided him. It was a Saturday morning when he took the risk. There was a local robotics competition happening in the city. Elijah had no team, no support, and no fancy equipment. Just his small robot pieced together with glue, screws, and pure hope. He wrapped it in cloth and boarded the bus alone, keeping his head low to avoid the stares. At the venue, sleek robots rolled across the tables. Teams in matching shirts rehearsed presentations, laptops clicked, people buzzed. Elijah stood at the edge of the room, his robot in hand, and whispered to the organizer that he wanted to join. The man looked at him, then at the robot, then back at him, a long pause. "You can enter," the man finally said, "but you'll need to present." Elijah nodded. His hands shook. When it was his turn, he stepped onto the stage. The audience looked up, curious. He opened his mouth to explain, but his words cracked, stuttered, froze. Snickers. And then, silence. He bent down, pressed a button, and the robot came alive. It walked. It picked up a tiny object and moved it. Then it waved. Gasps filled the room. One man stood up and clapped. Then another, and another. The applause grew. Elijah's eyes widened, unsure if this was real. When the judges came over to speak, he couldn't finish a full sentence. But it didn't matter, because his work spoke loud enough. Later that evening, a woman from a tech company approached him. "Who built this?" He pointed to himself. She smiled. "You just changed your story, son." From that day forward, everything changed. News outlets wrote about the silent genius. His story went viral. Schools that once ignored him now invited him to speak, though he mostly used videos and visuals instead of words. He was offered a scholarship to a prestigious technology academy. There, he met other kids who had once been different. Some were autistic, some had disabilities, some were refugees. But in that space, they weren't outcasts, they were visionaries. Elijah began to thrive. His confidence grew not because he could speak better, but because people finally listened. Years later, he returned to his old school not as a student, but as a guest speaker. The principal introduced him as Elijah Adewale, founder of Liston Tech Robotics. The auditorium roared. Elijah didn't speak for long, just a few words, still stuttered. But every word hit like thunder. He said, "Don't wait to be chosen. Build something so powerful. They can't ignore you," and he smiled. Not because they applauded, but because he finally believed he was never the problem. He was always the solution, just waiting for the world to catch up. The lesson from this story is, your value is not defined by rejection, it's revealed when you refuse to give up. Elijah was rejected, mocked, and overlooked because of how he spoke, not because of who he was or what he could do. But he didn't let rejection become his identity. Instead, he quietly worked on his passion, kept learning, and let his talent speak for him. The world often ignores the quiet ones, the different ones, the ones who don't fit in. But when you stay consistent, focused, and true to your gift, you eventually create something so powerful, they can't ignore you anymore. Key takeaways: rejection is not the end, it can be the beginning of your purpose. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes the most powerful voices aren't spoken, they're shown. Don't wait to be accepted, let your work speak so loudly that acceptance becomes unavoidable. Believe in yourself, especially when no one else does. That's when miracles start. They laughed at his silence. They mocked his difference. They walked past him like he didn't exist. But he kept going. He didn't shout back. He didn't beg for their approval. He just worked in silence, in pain, in faith. Until one day, the very thing they ignored became the thing they could no longer deny. And that's the truth about rejection. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means the world hasn't caught up to your greatness yet. So if they don't clap for you, build anyway. If they don't believe in you, believe harder. And when it's your turn to shine, don't gloat, smile, and keep building. Because your story isn't over, it's just beginning.